True strength is not control over circumstances, but freedom from being controlled by them. When your heart is anchored in God, external storms lose their power. Many people spend their lives trying to rearrange the world around them, believing that peace will come when everything finally falls into place. They chase approval, cling to relationships out of fear, and exhaust themselves trying to force outcomes that only God can shape. But hear this, you were never created to be ruled by life, you were created to stand above it. Strength is not proven by how tightly you can grip, but by how freely you can breathe, even when everything tries to press in on you. There is a deeper power, a sacred stillness, that arises in the one who has surrendered control and placed trust in the sovereignty of God. Life becomes heavy when your spirit ties itself to outcomes. You say, I must keep this job, or I will be lost, I must keep this person, or I will be empty, I must make this happen, or I will fail. That is not faith, that is fear, wearing the clothing of responsibility. Fear will tell you that your safety depends on your effort. Faith whispers that your safety has always rested in the one who adorned you in the secret place. The moment you detach your identity from what you cannot control, you are reborn into a greater dimension of spiritual power. Look at the storm that came upon the disciples on the sea. They panicked because they believed the waves had authority over them. But the master barner slept. Why? Because his peace was not built on circumstance. It was rooted in who he was and who his Father is. That is true strength. When others panic, you shall remain steady. When others cling, you shall release. When others fear the waves, you shall speak to them. The storm outside cannot sin, and they are a vessel whose inner world is anchored in heaven. Do not misunderstand detachment. It is not coldness or indifference. It is not withdrawing from love or refusing to care. It is knowing that nothing and no one on this earth holds your destiny in their hands. You love deeply, but you do not cling deep and deep or desperately. You act with excellence, but you do not collapse when plans shift. You walk boldly, but you do not tremble at uncertainty. This is not the strength of man, this is the strength of one whose spirit is hidden in God. There will come moments when what you thought you needed is taken. When ices you depended on grow silent. When doors you expected to walk through shut without explanation. The immature soul cries, why? The awakened soul whispers, lead me, Lord. For sometimes God protects you by removing what you would have held on to too tightly. Sometimes he lifts things from your hands not to deprive you, but to free you from false security. Detach from the illusion that you must hold everything together. You were not made to hold everything, only to hold the hand of the one who holds all things. When you no longer fear the loss of worldly support, heaven can trust you with ben piri. Tool authority. When you no longer chase validation, God can elevate you. When you no longer fear emptiness, you discover the fullness of his presence. Let the winds blow. Let opinions shift. Let seasons turn. The tree with deep roots does not fear the storm, it welcomes the rain that others run from. You are that tree when your peace is grounded in God. Nothing that is truly yours will ever require you to betray your spirit to keep it. And anything you lose by choosing peace was never meant to define you. True strength is not found in bending life to your will, but in surrendering to the of heaven until life itself bends to the God who dwells within you. Stand in that strength. Breathe in that freedom. And know this, when your heart is anchored in him, there is no storm, no pressure, no voice, and no force on earth that can shake you from your divine place of peace. Detachment is not abandonment, it is trust. There is a holy difference between walking away out of emptiness and releasing something because heaven has whispered, it is safe to let go. True detachment does not rise from bitterness, nor does it grow from disappointment. It is birthed in the heart that has discovered the greater hand at work behind every season. When you detach in faith, you are not losing, you are aligning. You are not surrendering in defeat. You are surrendering into divine guidance. We cling because we fear. We fear being alone. We fear failing. We fear the unknown. We fear losing that feels familiar. But fear is a chain, and whatever you cling to out of fear becomes your master. Trust breaks that chain. Trust is the gentle yet undefeatable voice inside that says, I do not need to control this, because God already has. Trust is the deep rest that enters when your soul fanal and darwai exhales after years of trying to force your own destiny. The moment you loosen your grip, God's hands tighten around your future. There are seasons in life where God will allow certain things to remain just long enough for you to learn from them, and then He will remove them for your elevation. No RTT because He wants to harm you, but because He refuses to let you build your identity on anything that isn't eternal. You may say, why did that relationship end? Why did that opportunity slip away? Why did that door close? And heaven answers, because it was preparing you, not defining you. That detachment comes when you trust that God sees what you cannot see and protects you from what you're not aware of. To trust God is to surrender your need to understand every detail. Faith does not always provide explanations, it provides assurance. Faith does not hand you blueprints, it carries you step by step. True spiritual maturity is revealed when you release something you deeply cared about, not because you stop loving, but because you love God's will more. There is profound strength in saying, Lord, if this stays, I praise you. If this leaves, I praise you still. That is trust, that is freedom, that is spiritual royalty. Many hold on because they believe letting go means losing value or dignity. But dignity is not in clinging, dignity is in confidence. The person who trusts God walks with a light spirit because nothing owns them. They are not bound to the approval of men, nor are they controlled by outcomes. They do not panic when plans shift, they simply bow to the wisdom of the one who orchestrates seasons. When you release, you do not fall, you rise. You do not diminish, you expand. There is a sacred posture in the soul that whispers, Lord, I don't need to know where Tea Party's road leads, because I know who walks with me. The one who trusts does not need to predict the future. They simply follow the one who writes it. And when your trust becomes deeper than your fear, you will discover that God never takes without purpose and never redirects without reason. What leads your life does not weaken you, it refines you. It shapes you. It upgrades your spirit to carry greater purpose. When Abraham lifted the knife over Isaac, it was not his son that God wanted, it was his attachment. When he proved his trust, God returned what he released. That is the mystery of surrender. Sometimes what you let go of returns stronger, purer, ordained. And sometimes God replaces it with something far greater than you imagined. Either way, you win in God's timing. Trust is the secret to peace. Trust is the birthplace of spiritual strength. Trust transforms storms into teacher NNRS, waiting into worship, and uncertainty into destiny. When you detach with faith, you declare, God, I do not need to hold everything because you hold me. And in that sacred release, heaven moves, doors open, chains break, clarity comes. And your soul rises, unburdened, undefeated, unstoppable, anchored, not in what you hold, but in who holds you. When emotions no longer dictate your direction, revelation becomes louder than reaction. There is a realm in the spirit where you stop living as a slave to your feelings and you begin living as a vessel of divine guidance. Most people in life do not truly make decisions. Their emotions make decisions for them. They are moved by fear, swayed by disappointment, driven by insecurity, pulled by approval, and shaken by stress. And because their emotions rule them, they cannot hear the voice of heaven clearly. They are reacting instead of receive, NDR. They are fighting storms outside while battles inside go unattended. But once you rise above emotional captivity, your spirit becomes still enough to hear God speak. And when God speaks, direction becomes clear. Peace becomes your authority, and no human voice can move you from your place of Deberstein. Emotions are not the enemy, they are signals, but they are terrible masters. They were never meant to lead you, only to inform you. Anger tells you something hurt, but revelation tells you how to heal. Fear tells you something is uncertain, but revelation tells you God already went ahead of you. Sadness tells you something matters, but revelation tells you new joy is being prepared. Emotional maturity does not mean you stop feeling. It means your feelings no longer overthrow your faith. It means your tears may fall, but your feet still move. Your voice may tremble, but your spirit remains firm. You acknowledge emotion, but you obey revelation. There are moments when your heart feels heavy, when disappointment tries to whisper that nothing will change, when isolation tries to convince you that you are forgotten. It is in those moments that the enemy hopes you will react, give up, doubt, retreat, surrender your strength. But the one who has mastered spiritual stillness will pause, breathe, and turn inward where the Spirit whispers, "Be still and know that I am God." Emotion wants you to panic. Revelation reminds you who you belong to. Emotion wants you to rush. Revelation tells you the timing of heaven is never late. Emotion tries to blind. Revelation opens your eyes to destiny. Reaction is a reflex. Revelation is a response. Reaction rises from wounds. Revelation rises from wisdom. Reaction speaks from pressure. Revelation speaks from presence. When you lie from emotion, you live from the outside in. But when you live from revelation, you live from the inside out. You no longer chase peace, you carry it. You no longer beg for direction, you receive it. You are not tossed by winds because you are anchored in eternal truth. Think of how many blessings people lose because they reacted. They spoke too quickly, walked away too soon, allowed anger to poison a divine assignment, or let fear stop a God-given dream. Reaction is expensive. It drains destiny. But the person who waits for revelation becomes unshakable. Even when they are hurt, the DNNY do not destroy their future with impulsive decisions. Even when rejected, they do not allow bitterness to root in their heart. Even when uncertain, they do not rush, they pray, they listen, they discern, they move when God says move. Emotional detachment does not mean coldness, it means clarity. It means you have stepped into the place where silence no longer scares you, because silence has become your sanctuary with God. It means you can feel deeply, yet remain stable. You can love fully, yet stay anchored. You can face chaos, yet move with wisdom. People may misunderstand you. They may think you are distant, unbothered, unshaken. But what they do not see is that heaven has taught you stillness. They do not see the altars you have built in private, the tears you surrendered before God, the nights you wrestled and rose strengthened, the training of the Spirit that broke your dependence. And emotional reactions. This is spiritual authority. Not loudness, not aggression, not control, but stillness under pressure, clarity in confusion, obedience over impulse, listening before acting. When emotions fall silent and the Spirit rises, you begin to hear things others cannot hear. Divine instruction becomes clear. Destiny aligns. Wisdom pours like oil. Purpose becomes louder than pain. And suddenly, the storms that once shook you become platforms that elevate you. For revelation does not just guide you, it transforms you. It makes you unmovable, untouchable by chaos, unbothered by no NDREC, unafraid of tomorrow. You no longer live led by emotion, you live led by God. And that is where true power begins. Letting go is not weakness, it is spiritual sovereignty. The moment you release your need to cling is the moment heaven fills your hands with what is truly yours. There comes a T-I-M-B-R-M-E in every believer's journey when God will test not how tightly you can hold on, but how gracefully you can surrender. The world tells you that strength is possession, control, dominance, and never letting go. But in the kingdom, strength looks like open hands, bowed knees, and a heart that says, Lord, not my will, but yours. True power is not found in the ability to grip, but in the courage to release. And when you release, you do not fall, you rise into the sovereignty of trust. Many cling to what is familiar not because it is good, but because it is known. The known feels safe, even though which and it suffocates. But destiny does not grow in comfort, it grows in surrender. There are assignments that ended not because you failed, but because you completed the chapter. There are people who left not because you were unworthy, but because their role in your story was temporary. There are seasons and DRS that closed not as punishment, but as preparation. Holding on to what God has ended is like carrying yesterday's manna. It spoils your spirit and blinds your vision. Releasing is not losing, it is making room for the new wine of destiny. Letting go is an act of spiritual royalty, because only teach or those who know they are chosen can release without fear. Only those who know heaven backs them can walk away from what no longer aligns. Only those who trust the author of their destiny can lay down attachments and say, God has something greater. To let go is to step into a divine boldness that says, I am not defined by what leaves, I am defined by what God ordains. When you let go, you honor the God who writes your story instead of the fear that tries to rewrite it. Sometimes God removes what you thought you needed to show you who you really are without it. Sometimes He takes away crutch S, so you remember you were designed to stand. Sometimes He disrupts familiarity so you can walk by faith again. You do not discover your spiritual wings while clinging to branches. You discover them when God calls you to fly. Release is not the end. It is the beginning of expansion, elevation, and clarity. It is the breaking of a shell so the eagle can emerge, the shedding of the old so the anointing can flow fresh and pure. Release does not mean you stop caring. It means you trust God's plan more than your preference. It means you refuse to let attachment masquerade as loyalty when God has already whispered, move forward. It means you stop picking up what God told you to lay down. There is a grace that meets you the moment you let go, a supernatural peace, a quiet strength, a spiritual clarity. Heaven never leaves empty the hands that release in faith. The emptying is preparation for filling. The surrender is preparation for inheritance. The letting go is preparation for lifting up. There will always be voices that say, hold on, fight harder, don't let go. But listen to the quieter voice in your spirit, the voice that comes not from fear, but from faith. The Holy Spirit will never instruct you to cling to what injures you, drains you, or delays you. God does not call you backward, He calls you higher. And higher requires release. Letting go is a declaration, my destiny is not fragile, my blessing is not threatened, my future is secure. When you let go, you step into spiritual authority, not the authority of domination, but of divine surrender. The authority of one who knows their inheritance cannot be stolen, their calling cannot be cancelled, and their future cannot be hindered by what leaves. Those who know who they are in God can walk away gracefully, walk forward confidently, and walk into new seasons with peace. Release what weighs you. Release who drains you. Release what expired. Release what God has already outgrown in you. Your spirit is rising. Your destiny is unfolding. Letting go is not the end of your story. It is the moment your wings spread and heaven says, now, watch what I will do. Let go, rise, step forward. For your release is the doorway to your divine rising. And now, beloved soul, as these truths settle in your spirit, hear this with the depth of heaven's conviction. You were never called to live bound, burdened, or attached to what cannot follow you into destiny. You were chosen to walk in a higher realm where stillness replaces striving, trust replaces fear, revelation replaces reaction, and surrender becomes your strength. Every tear you have cried, every letting go that felt like breaking, every season where God stripped you only to rebuild you, it has all been preparation. You have been learning to detach, not because you are weak, but because heaven has been teaching you to fly. To let go is not to lose it, is to ascend. To release is not to shrink it, is to step into spiritual sovereignty. What you render in faith, God returns in glory. You are stepping into a life where peace is not fragile, identity is not dependent on people, and your future is not shaped by circumstance, but by divine purpose. You are moving from emotional reaction to spiritual revelation. You no longer cling out of fear, you stand in trust. You no longer chase what is fading, you walk toward what is eternal. You no longer fear what leaves you, honor what God brings. And if you are hearing this now, know this deeply. Heaven has marked you. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not losing. You are MDRing. Everything that has been stripped was making room. Everything that shifted was alignment. Everything that felt like ending was preparation for divine beginning. So breathe, release, trust. Lift your hands not in surrender to weakness, but in surrender to destiny. You do not need to force what is already appointed. You do not need to chase what is already yours. Simply walk forward in quiet confidence, anchored in the one who cannot fail. Your spirit is awakening. Your peace is returning. Your future is opening. This is your moment, not to hold tighter, but to rise higher. Let go and risk and BRE into the life God already prepared for you. Everything changes now.